Hello everyone. So today we're finalizing our notes, or we should be finishing most of our notes for the principles of art. So we've talked about the art elements. These are our puzzle pieces. And what we do with the puzzle pieces is we apply the principles of art. So I need in your sketchbook to open it up, and your header will be principles of art. You do not have to write anything below that. I just need the principles of art. So while you are writing that down, just to let you guys know the different principles that we are going to be covering is 1, proportion, variety, balance, movement, rhythm, repetition, and pattern, emphasis, unity or harmony, and contrast. So again, up at the top of your paper, I should see principles of art, nothing else. Okay, for our first one, we have balance. If you see anything in green, I need you to write it down. Balance is our first principle of art. That is equalizing the visual forces or visual weight in a picture. So if I look at the picture, I see two great mountains on each side of my picture, and it divides more or less down the center. And it balances out pretty well. I don't have any side that feels like it's bigger or more important, and that's how I create balance. Next, underneath balance, you do not have to write everything in green this time. I just need you to write down 1, formal, 2, symmetrical, 3, radial, and 4, asymmetry. I'm just trying to get you guys comfortable with some of these definitions, because I will say these words from time to time. So if I have formal balance, it occurs when equal or very similar objects are placed on opposite sides of a central axis. So if I chop the picture on the right about in half, because I have two people, it helps balance out my picture right there in the center. That is formal balance. Symmetrical. So if I chop this picture down the center, those two sides are nearly identical. I have 2.5 ballerinas. I have 2 trees on each side. I have 1 elephant and 1 elephant. I have half the bridge, and then 2 of those little pegs that help hold up the elephants on that wood piece. Radial. It is when the elements of a design come out from a central point. So if I look at the picture, or I imagine a flower in my head that's right there in the center, if I look at the center of the flower or the center of the staircase, and everything gets bigger and bigger as it comes out from that point. So all of the petals would get bigger and bigger as it comes out from that central point in a flower. And asymmetry or informal symmetry. So balance of unlike elements, because two objects may have same visual weight as a larger singular object. So if I look at the example on the right, there's not really much going up on the left except for that basic pattern, but I have this large blue circle area and that one orange circle that helps balance out the other side. There's a lot going on in the background, but somehow our eye feels like it's balanced, the picture feels like it's complete when we have those blue and orange circles on the right hand side. So again, all I need under this is 1 formal, 2 symmetrical, 3 radial, and 4 asymmetry, and none of the definitions. Our next major principle is movement. This is how your eye moves throughout the artwork. So when we talk about our art elements, I see line and shape that help define the edges of the water and the crests that occur, and those lines and shapes help us lead our eye through the artwork. Next, you do not have to write any of this down, but different ways to create movement. You can overlap the objects. You can align images from edge to produce a feeling of continuous movement. For example, that may be like the example with the reindeer. I have edge to edge reindeer and my eye follows through with them just because I'm touching edge to edge. A strong sense of form, so I have good shadows, definitions, and it feels like I can pick this up and follow through with this form. Creating a path between objects, so again I'm returning to these reindeer. Because I have them one behind the other, I create and follow through with them because my eye is interested just to see where they're going or what they're doing. Emphasize or exaggerating elements. So if I look at the picture on the bottom right, all those triangles, because I have emphasized some of them, they're bigger. My eye is interested, one, because then after that it's the exact same shapes but they get smaller and smaller as they go away. So my eye follows through. You can also place the center or horizon line high in the picture. Your eye is then confused. Why am I so far down to the ground? And they're trying to investigate the picture and look around because they are very confused as to why it's different whenever you would be normally about half and half because of how high and tall we are as people. Blurry outlines. So if I look at the picture at the bottom right, there's actually two faces that are painted there, and because it's all blurry, the transition between the two faces, it looks like it's moving. And that also relates to multiple images. So I have two different faces, and because I have those, it makes it look like that face is just vibrating in place. Our next one that I need you to write down is rhythm and repetition. It is repeating an object or art element that creates a pattern and rhythm. So if I look at the picture on the bottom right, I see all these repeated cups that are more or less all the same, and they're produced in a pattern or set out in a pattern, and it's just interesting to look at. Same thing with the pictures on the left and top and bottom. So I have all these different patterns that are established, even if they're different colors. As long as the shapes and general pattern is established, it's interesting to look at and I really like them. Our next one is emphasis. I will need both these paragraphs because they're both in green. So emphasis is an emphasis of an area or focal point. It is the first part of the work that grabs your attention. So if I look at the picture up on the top right, the skull with the bright colors behind it, my eye goes straight to that skull, one, because of how bright it is, but two, it is in the center. That is one of our ways to create emphasis that is down at the bottom. So one, it is contrast of elements, the brightness of the skull versus the dark, rich colors in the background. They're completely opposite, but because we have those opposites, my eye focuses on the skull. That is also for the bottom one, location, centering. Because the skull is in the center, I am more interested in looking straight there than anywhere else. And to talk about the picture on the bottom left, that'll help us out with our third one. So for the most part, I have really dull colors around this young lady in red. So I have blacks, I have grays, I have really pastel-y blues, pastel-y yellows, but she is there in that bright red dress, but also in the center. So, because she is in the center, we use centering, but we also use contrast of elements because of the colors. She's also isolated. Not necessarily that she's by herself, but she is the only object that is that bright red. She is the only red object there, and because she is isolated in being in red, our eye goes straight there. Same thing with the picture on the top right. Because that is the only skull or only major object to focus on, our eye goes straight there. on, we have contrast. Contrast deals with the difference of the art elements used. So if I look at the picture on the left, they are contrasting those arches and the pillars by using black versus white. They are completely opposite, so our eye focuses on the difference between them. Now when I'm looking at the picture on the right, we are talking about those complementary colors that we covered the other day. So, if you remember correctly, our complementary colors of blue is orange. So for the most part, I have mostly blue and mostly orange. And because they're different, our eye focuses mostly on the orange of the flower because it is the most interesting object there that is orange and brightly colored. You do not have to write the things in black, just in blue. Next is unity and harmony. They're more or less the same thing. So if you just want to write unity slash harmony and only do one of the definitions, that works for me. So harmony creates unity by stressing the similarities of separate but related parts. So I might have harmonious colors. They're analogous and close to each other on the color wheel. I can have the repetitions of shapes, so similar patterns. Or I can have spacing that's very similar. So I leave about the exact same amount of space and it'll feel harmonious. Unity. It's the quality of oneness, of wholeness, that is achieved through the effective use of elements. So if I look at the picture of the right, it feels harmonious and unified because for the most part all of the brush strokes are the same. And the colors have been chosen intentionally. There's no color that really stands out besides if it's dark versus light. But at the same time, those brush strokes bring everything together. Okay, moving on. We are out of the principles of art. However, there's a couple of terms that I want to make sure that we all know, just because I'm going to utilize and talk about them quite frequently. So, on a separate area within the same page, just in your notes, I need you to write down these 5 definitions. So 1, we have composition. That is the selection or arrangement of the elements of art and design in your picture. So I am carefully picking out where I want to put these things, whether or not I'm using balance, a pattern, anything to sit there and arrange it and make it feel like it is a final picture and feels unified or harmonious. 2, we have design. So this is arranging your elements in a work that is non-objective or abstract. So if I just say, well, that's a beautiful design, that doesn't mean that I'm saying you have a beautiful person, you have a beautiful flower. I'm saying that you have a beautiful design because I can't tell exactly what it is. That could be similar to a paisley design, the outline of a logo like the Nike check. That's just a beautiful design. We don't know necessarily what it is unless we associate something with it. 3, we have medium. So medium is what an artwork is made of or how it is made. So if I'm saying that our medium for a certain project is pencil, we are only using pencil for that project. If I say that we are using oil pastel and ink, those are the 2 medium that we are using for that project. Number 4 is subject matter. This is what an artwork is of. So if I go back and think about the skull picture that we were looking at from Georgia O'Keeffe, the subject matter is the skull, not the colors in the background, not the black line through the center. It is of the skull. And last but not least is the rule of thirds. That is not centering your subject. So sometimes if you want to put your pictures off balance with informal symmetry, we use the rule of thirds. So I divide my picture by 3 sections on one side, so horizontally, and then I go divide it again in 3, and then I would pick one of the intersections that are on 1 and 3. So if I'm looking up at the top of the picture, I'll pick line 1, and if I'm looking at the bottom where it crosses up and down, I will pick the third one. So it will connect at dot 1 and 3 on the line that comes up there. And if you ever have questions about this, I'll be able to show you an actual example of the rule of thirds. Once you have all these written down, you can close up your sketchbook, clean all that up, and then we'll start working on our next activity.